that's going to be talking.
Well, you're going to ruin your camera. I'm going to tell you that right now.
All right, don't worry about it. First of all, do me a favor and just give me some background on yourself. Where you were born, what area of the United States you were brought up in.
I was born in Fort Sill, Oklahoma in 1941. And I was raised in Chickasha, Oklahoma, which is about 15 miles from where Melvin Heath, the guy that won the '56 Nationals, lived. And
so what did your family do?
my mother was a nurse. My dad was a career Army man.
So you lived in this, was it, you consider it the suburbs, or on a farm, or what?
No, we lived on a farm.
Yeah, I don't know what you had back then.
Yeah, I never lived. First time I ever lived in a house that had one close to it was in 1956. I went to, my dad was getting transferred overseas, and I didn't want to go, so I stayed with an aunt and uncle in Oklahoma City. And I was going to go to school. That's where I met Jimmy Nix. Matter of fact, I struck up a friendship with a kid that lived next door to my aunt and uncle, and the first day of school we walked to school together that morning. We were standing on the corner talking to some other guys, and this fool comes around the corner in a 40 Ford on 2 wheels. And I asked this kid, I said, "Who is that?" And he said, "That's Jimmy Nix. He's dangerous. Stay away from him. Don't never have nothing to do with him."
And what year was this?
1956.
56. Your economic status was just basically just like everybody else in the area. You guys were not rich, but not poor.
Nobody was rich in those days, I don't think.
Yeah. What do you think moved you in the direction of the automobile?
Well, the first movement I had to racing, I went with an uncle once in Melvin Heath to a drag race at Kettle Mills, Texas. And he was interested in the deal, and after the first day, to show you how interested I was, I hitchhiked home. It didn't make any sense to me, because in those days, I know now, they only had single lane timers and they qualified one car at a time. And there was no racing to it, so I said, I got better things to do, so I went home.
How old were you at the time, you think?
Well, it was in 1956, before he had won the Nationals. It was probably, I'll tell you what it was the safety safari race they had down there, which he won, which, as a matter of fact, he gave me the trophy he won from there, and I restored it and gave it to NHRA.
And that was that really one of the first, that was, if not the first, one of the first
that was the only
NHRA events that took place at that track, right? The safety safari?
Kettle Mills was a real old racetrack. It was one of the first. It was about the same time as Goleta. They started running way back in the 50s. And the North Texas Timing Association ran the track. I know that now. I did not know that then, you know. A lot of famous guys ran that deal. Vance Hunt and J.L. Payne and Bobby Langley and guys like that, people you know, you know.
Yes.
But they didn't mean nothing to me. I thought it was stupid. I mean, I like cars like everybody else. As a matter of fact, I remember we knew the day the cars came out, and I didn't go to school on those days. We went down and toured the dealerships and looked at all the new cars. You know, that was the thing to do back in the 50s.
Sure. Well, when did you, so in other words, you basically, at that point, you weren't impressed with the sport. What brought you back?
When I got out of school, in 1956 in September, we started a school. And that was the first time blacks were allowed to go to school with white people. I mean, you know, they went to their own restaurants and things, you know, whether anybody agrees with it or not, I didn't make the rules. That's the way they were, you know. I didn't have nothing to do with it.
Right.
Matter of fact, I lived out in the country and I never saw any black people. I didn't know any. You know, so I wasn't definitely not a racist, I don't think. That's the quickest way to find out if a guy is a racist, if he says he's not normally, but I wasn't. I didn't know anything about him. And I started back to school, and I remember the last day I went to school. We had a little guy, he was a biology teacher, nicest little guy you ever knew, and I really liked him. You know, and one day I'm walking, that was my class, and I walk in there and there's these two black girls and these two black boys. They're just giving him hell, you know, cussing him. I was raised to believe you definitely didn't cuss in front of older people, you know, you just didn't do that kind of stuff. And so we told them to knock it off, and they just said something, so I threw one of them out a window. It was the second story, as a matter of fact. Needless to say, they didn't need me no more in that school. So my mother sent me to Phoenix to go to work for an uncle. And I started hanging drywall, you know, sheetrock at that time. And he helped me he got me a car, a 53 Chevy. And one day, about February or March of 1957, I was going down the street in Phoenix, and this guy in a Thunderbird pulled up beside me and asked me if I wanted to drag. I said, sure. So, the guy was really a fair play individual, I thought, but I mean later on, because you can imagine what he did to my six-cylinder Chevrolet. So he pulls into a gas station up there, and I pulled in too, and I talked to him about the car, you know. And he drove off, and I was talking to the gas station attendant there, and I said, boy, that guy's got a fast car. He said, yeah, he said, I know that guy. He's a rich kid. He's got everything, but he said he can outrun my Merc. He had a 51 Mercury. And we went over and looked at it. He showed me the motor, and I said, boy, that's pretty nice. And I said, is it fast? He said, you bet. I had 3 carburetors on it, and some aftermarket heads, I think. And, you know, the normal stuff they did to them back then. And I said, did you do all that? He said, no. He said, right across the street, you see that sign that says Deep Tone Mufflers? I said, yeah. He said, you see that sign that says Lefty Speed Shop? I said, yeah. He said, Lefty's in there. Go see Lefty. So I go over and I walked in, and I said to Lefty, I said, I'm looking for Lefty. And he said, I'm Lefty. And I said, the guy across the street said you can make my car fast. And he said, well, let's go see what you got. So we got outside, and he said, boy, Lefty called me boy till the day he died, as a matter of fact. He said, you got to have something to start with. You don't have nothing here. He said, now we could put an Olds or a Chevy or a Cadillac in there. And he said, you might have something. He said, probably cost around $1,000 to do all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, I don't have $1,000. He said, come here, I'll show you a race car. So he takes me in the back, and there sits the Money Olds Special. He said, now that's a race car. I said, I've seen a car like that before. I'm not interested in that stuff. He said, where? I said, Melvin Heath has a car like that. Well, Melvin was the baddest guy in the world at that time. He said, Melvin Heath from Oklahoma? And I said, yeah, from Rush Springs. And he says, my God, do you know Melvin? I said, sure, I've known Melvin all my life. He said, well, look at my car. He said, is my car something like his? And I looked at it. I said, yeah, it's just like his. I didn't know it was, or, you know, it was or not, you know, but it was pretty close. It was, Melvin's was a lightweight, lighter than any of the other cars. That's why the car won, and Lefty's was too. And I learned a lot of things about that car from working on it. It was the first car with a direct drive in it, no transmission. It was real light. And Buddy Sampson drove the car, and he was really, really light back in those days. And he said, why don't you forget about racing that car and just drive that car to work and go to races with me? He said, I like you. He said, besides, I need somebody that's strong. Help push me. Because, see, we pushed this car to start it. Lord. Yeah. So, we went out that night. I got one. We went out that night to Phoenix, and we won the race. Matter of fact, that car was defeated one time. Only one time. The Speed Sport Roadster, Red Griff and Lyle Fisher. We ran at a race one night, and or one day, and we won top gas eliminator, and he won top fuel. And we got to talking, and Lefty and Red got to talking, and they decided they'd race. Buddy left on him, and just if the track had been 20 feet shorter, he would have won the race without any problem. As it turned out, there was about half the people said that Lefty won, and half of them said Red won, because, you know, that was on. They had a lot of dead heats in those days. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but there were a couple. Joe Dillon, one of the partners in the car, he was down there, and he said he beat us. Simple as that. I honestly believe he beat us, so we figured he did. But that was the only time that car was beat. When we went to Oklahoma City in 1957, we won the Nationals. And then we came back, and it's like all partnerships. Partnerships very rarely work in anything in this life. But Joe and Lefty was upset because Buddy got all the attention, the reporters, the guys that take the pictures. What do you call them? Sure, photographers. They all wanted Buddy. They didn't care nothing about the rest of us. And so they had a big argument, and Joe said, well, the heck with you guys, I'm buying you out. So Joe Dillon, he bought everything. He was going to run the car himself, and Lefty said, well, I don't know what's going to happen to us now. He said, maybe we'll build another car, and me and you'll do it. So the next weekend, Joe took the car out to Phoenix. It's a real funny deal. He made a run in the car, and I guess he forgot you were supposed to shut it off after the quarter mile. I don't know what happened. But he ran out through the desert there and turned it over and tore the body all up. He got out of the car and went home. He just left it there, walked over to the highway, caught him a ride, and went home. And nobody could find him. It was a funny deal, you know, because, God, we looked till 2 in the morning. Finally, a guy come out and said, hey, Joe's home drinking beer. So Monday morning, he called Lefty and said, come over, you get all that stuff. And Lefty said, well, I've already got it. You didn't pick it up. He said, well, you can have it all. And so me and Lefty, we got the car, and about that time, I remember one weekend Lefty told me he was going to California to see Chet Herbert. Well, I knew who Chet Herbert was, but he didn't tell me why, and he come back and he said, well, I'm going to move to California. I'm going to work for Herbert. I'm going to build a twin-engine car. I said, well, whereabouts in California? He said, Orange County is where he's at, but he said, my wife has I believe his wife had some relatives that lived around Montebello and Pico Rivera. Pico Rivera is where they moved. And he he started getting everything ready to move, and me and him built a trailer to haul all his stuff on. He made about 3 trips because he had to get all the stuff out of the shop, you know. And he found him a shop over there, and I got to thinking about it, and I said, well, you know, and by then I'd been doing drywall long enough I could get a job anywhere, and I figured they're building. I asked him, I said, do they build houses over there? He said, sure. So I just drove over there one weekend, and first place I went, I got a job. Ended up working for the guy 11 years.